To me, as a child, Cuba was paradise. Warm weather. We went to the beach every summer. We had a house on the beach and we stayed there all summer long. And I had all my girlfriends from school, and it was just a happy time.
What I remember about Cuba was happy times only. You know? All our life was very easy. We got everything we wanted to have, and my dad gave us everything we wanted.
He provided extremely well for us and the rest of the family.
Yes.
I went to a Catholic school in Cuba, and I remember they were talking about the Iron Curtain. The nun explained to us what that was, and the way she ended it was, but that's never going to happen here.
What we oppose fundamentally is the aggressive nature of the communist state. Its unceasing effort to expand wherever it can, to grow bigger, to take over, to supplant. This deadly impulse toward aggression we oppose as a continual threat to peace. These are the contrasting points of view between the major antagonists in the conflict which has become known over the last decade as the Cold War.
Communists have fed on the stuff that makes revolutions, have taken over other people's revolutions right into Cuba here in the Western Hemisphere.
When the revolution started, I just turned 8 years old.
I was
10.
And you were 7.
I was 7. But in our family, it was very tense because my dad, he was involved in the beginning of the revolution.
He used to send truckloads of food, groceries, up to the rebels that were up in the mountains fighting the Batista government. When Castro took over, he was part of the system for about 6 months.
He realized what was happening with the communists taking over basically the whole revolution, and then he had to resign.
Yeah, but he was a heck of an economist, and Castro did not want to let him go. He went to my house to talk to him, and I accepted. And when he finally was able to break that bond, like 6 or 8 months down the line, they came and they nationalized his business. That was the payment for not agreeing with what they were doing at that time.
My grandfather he had a department store, and they came in, took it away. You can't do anything.
We are at the American Museum of the Cuban Diaspora. I am the director of the museum. I am also Pedro Pan. I am also the curator of the exhibit. We had a dictator. It was an authoritarian dictator, meaning that if you do not mess with the government doesn't mess with you. So that's why our lives could be so normal as children. Of course, our parents wanted elections and they wanted to live in a democracy. And that's what they thought. Most Cubans thought that they were getting when Batista left. People were very happy, thinking that finally we were going to have a democracy, and instead we got a totalitarian dictatorship, which is a lot worse than authoritarian because they control everything.
Y tú, campesino, y tú.
In the years since he took power, Fidel Castro has become an enemy of the United States. In the eyes of Washington, a threat to United States security in the Caribbean.
I still remember my grandfather saying that communism and socialism are great in paper. Wonderful when you read it. Oh, this is great, but you cannot practice it. Everything was okay, and then all of a sudden everything changed. It was like a nightmare.
One day, I went to my school, and the militia people were there with guns. They wouldn't let us in. I was with my mom, and my mom just pushed her way in, and Mother Superior, they were guys with her in her office. I guess they were getting the money and everything else. And that's the last day I saw my school.
There was a big supermarket 2 blocks away from our house.
That's why when we moved to Havana?
Yeah, yeah. The Minimax.
The Minimax, yeah?
Yeah. And
you could see the change. You could see the change.
Lack of everything.
The aisles, because they're empty, they just did stuff started to disappear from the supermarkets. The TV stations,
Right.
it all changed. It was all Marxism and the communist indoctrination was right there.
1960 ends, Castro goes on television to warn the Cuban people. He says the United States is preparing to invade Cuba. The moment of armed confrontation between Cuba and the United States is near.
When the Bay of Pigs, that we were living in the house in Havana, at the B-26 bomber, he came straight through the subdivision where we were living at, and he would turn around on top of that house, of our house, the second-story house. You could see the pilot from the windows of our house, of our bedroom. When the guy would turn around, and the tracer bullets
going each way.
Going each way, right on top of our house. It was a heck of an experience, I'll tell you that.
We used to go to Catholic schools. 95% of us were Catholic, we were people of faith. When they tell you, you have to send your child to a public school where they're going to be indoctrinated in Marxism and Catholicism is no longer allowed, then they lost their rights as parents.
You were harassed if you were Catholic, if you went to Mass, and besides that, there were many churches open because he had taken, I would say, about 95% of all the priests and the nuns out of Cuba. And they will do things to kids like give him a candy and say, ask God, see if he gives it to you. You see, it doesn't come from the heavens. So we give it to you, we're the ones that are giving it to you. And that's the way they started with little kids, to get them.
The indoctrination.
A lot of my friends started disappearing. I mean, I was with them the day before riding my bike, and the next day, they were gone.
We had a friend that was playing with us, let's say last night. We were all playing out there. The next day, we don't see him. He disappeared.
Operation Pedro Pan was the largest child refugee exit in the Western Hemisphere. Over 14,000 children came from Cuba between December 26 of 1960 and October 22nd of 1962.
My dad, he didn't want us to be communists.
I don't know how he
was contacted
or got in touch with the people that were providing the information
to get the kids out of Cuba.
Right, to get the kids out of Cuba through the Catholic welfare.
Then they started talking about sending older children like my age, 12, to the country to teach children that did not read or write. And they would have to stay there for weeks at a time. And that's when my mother, no.
They just thought there was going to be some type of war within Cuba, and they didn't want us there. When I got to the airport in Cuba, that was the toughest thing for me, was that they would not let my father in. And my father broke down and cried. That's the first time I ever saw him do that.
They would come from the airport in Havana to the airport in Miami, and from there to a number of camps. They were expecting 200 children. That's the original plan, a list of 200, and 14,000 showed up.
When I left Cuba, we were only allowed to bring 3 changes of clothes, 3 outfits. So my grandmother made it a point that somehow we were going to have a little more, so she would take 2 dresses and sew them together like a reversible dress, and we were able to take them apart just from one from the other, so that was extra clothing. They were handmade by my grandmother, and this one took 6 months for her just to prepare the fabric. It's special to me.
He told me, you're going to the United States. He tried to teach us as much English at that time as possible. I mean,
which we didn't learn much.
No. And he said, you know, that they were too small, so they told them that they were going to summer camp. I knew that we weren't going to summer camp. And he says, I would follow later. In 45 minutes, you landed in a different country, different culture,
with 3
different
sets
language.
of clothes.
3 sets of clothes. You didn't know where you were. You hang it. They threw you in a camp with 300, 400, 500 kids. If you have kids, you look back and you think 3 kids at that age, and you don't know if you're ever going to see them.
You're being here in Florida City,
bajo el cielo acogedor de Estados Unidos,
under the sheltering skies of the United States, far from the land where you were born,
al calor de vuestras
torn
madres.
from the warmth of your parents.
Os lo están repitiendo.
This is a constant reminder
Hay algo que anda mal en el mundo.
that there is something very wrong
Yo
in
quisiera
the
que
world.
fuerais niños.
This is the visas which were given to us by the Catholic welfare to arrive in Miami, signed by Monsignor Brian Walsh, who was the one that started this program for 14,000 Cuban kids. This was at the camp. Carlos, myself, Monsignor Brian Walsh. His name is Carmelo Rivero, which I went to school with in Cuba, and it happened that he came days after we did, and we saw him at the camp, and these other ones, I don't recall their names, but they were together with us.
They put us in a van, and we went to Florida City, like an old army base, and they were not using that. They had little houses, and a Cuban couple was in each house looking after the kids that were put in those houses. So there were 6 beds. My sister got in the bottom and I got on the top, and that was it.
I was in Miami 9 days, and like about the 4th day you're there, a lady interviews you.
What's your name?
See, do you have family, so if you want to go somewhere in particular, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I have no family here. I don't care where I'm going. And she says, well, we had just opened. It's going to start in a couple of weeks. Nashville, Tennessee. So would you like to go there? I said, it's fine.
We left Cuba and we were here for 5.5 months.
4 months.
Yeah. And then we got the news.
It was late August of 1962, and they closed to the office and said, you're leaving to Nashville in 2 or 3 days, and the 3 of you are going to go together. We're going to get your brother Paul, and you 3 are going together with a family in Nashville. I've never heard about Nashville.
No idea what.
Never.
We had never heard about Tennessee, period.
You went into this big room where they served lunch and dinner and breakfast, but there they had this huge map. And they ask you, where do you want to go? Well, my mom told me not to let you separate us. So she said, but we have places in Tennessee, in Nashville. I had never heard of Nashville.
Because so many children kept coming that Catholic Charities in Miami had contracts with Catholic Charities in over 200 cities in 45 states. And so the children would be placed in those Catholic Charities in the other cities.
At that time, Father Leo Senior was head of Catholic Charities. And Pedro Pan, of course, was happening quasi-nationally in the U.S. when the children were coming over. It was all very new. I think Catholic Charities organizations nationally had not been in the refugee business. But the church in the United States has a long history of helping immigrant communities settle, because the Catholic Church in the United States is essentially an immigrant church. So waves of Irish and German and Slavic peoples. But there was kind of a lull after World War II that because we did not have those waves of immigrants anymore.
In our diocese, something I think we can be extremely proud of is that St. Mary Orphanage, which is now known as St. Mary Villa Child Development Center, started in 1849. It really expanded during and shortly after the Civil War. So there's always been a commitment to caring for young children, children who were abandoned or abused. When Catholic Charities became a corporation of the state of Tennessee in 1962, there was a need to be incorporated so that the church could have legal custody and work with the Cuban foster children and contract with the state.
I came from a family of 10, a large family. Mother was used to kids a lot. The house was getting empty again, and Mother had a real good relationship with the priest at Christ the King, actually Monsignor Duffy. So she said she went to church, and he was saying, now if any of you all have any room in your home, if, like say the kids are grown up and out, and she said, I knew he was talking to me. She said, I'd already raised so many. I thought, oh no, I'm not going to do that. And then later she said, it just worked on and she ran into him, and he said, Mrs. Rowan, now, aren't you getting your children out now? The last one's going, and that was me, because he knew I was getting married soon. So she said, okay, I hear you. I'll take them. How many are there? He said 3. And she said, I'd love to take them. And she did. Mother really, she loved being a mother. I have to say that. She enjoyed being a mother more than any other woman I know.
Then Mrs. Rowan and her daughter, Sarah, went to the airport and picked us up, and we were very scared.
Yeah.
Well,
they were very scared.
He wasn't.
He was.
But we didn't even want to eat that night. They had some sandwiches, and I told him, don't eat. I don't know if they're going to poison us or what. And he says, okay, give them to me. And he ate them. He ate these 3 bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches.
BLT sandwiches, which I had never had before. And they were both crying, and he was telling him, don't eat it because they're going to poison you. And I was trying to appease him at the same time. If you're not going to eat it, I'm going to eat it. That was we talk about that all the time. So I sat down and I ate all the sandwiches.
I remember walking through the halls, and all these people were standing there, where the people picking up us, the kids. And I heard my name, and I said, see. And then there's Miss Bullock, Mary Bullock, and sister went with another family. We didn't live in the same household. They had 1 child, Brenda, and we went to Cathedral. It was a great experience for me. I loved going there. The Bullocks, they treated me like part of the family. Then Lulu was the princess at Tony's house.
My parents just announced one day that we were going to have a Cuban immigrant girl live with us. So, and that she would be just one of the children. She was the only girl, of course, in the family at that time, which I think my mother enjoyed after having 3 boys for 10 years. She had a big personality anyway, as it turned out, and once she got the language down and understood the cultural lay of the land, she just became, an all-American girl.
You have to remember, at that age, I didn't really know what Cuban meant. But we felt like, because we had already had siblings, we were tired of them. Anna was like a new toy. So we were excited for her to come. I thought that she was going to be in my grade, is what Mama had told me. But here came this young woman that was very tall, and this hair way up here. And I thought, oh, she's too old to be in my class. But she was a beauty, for sure. Daddy was a truck driver. Mama didn't work. So they really
sounds
had
like
to,
a country song.
So they had to pinch pennies.
I think that's so wonderful to think that there you are, your money's tight. You already got 5 children to feed. Now you're going to take another one in, I think that's just wonderful.
They treated us like family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
From the
warm.
first day.
Yeah, since day one.
They had a 2-story house. It was 3010 Brightwood Avenue. That's the address. They gave us the whole second floor, which had a little kitchenette.
Not that we were cooking.
No. And they had 3 beds for us. Normal life. We went to school, came back.
Yes, school was right in back of the house. The house We just had to cross a yard, and the school was at the
street. The next, yeah.
There was Christ the King right at the back.
As a matter of fact, I have a few diplomas, you know, at school and college and stuff, and the one that I really admire the most is the one that I got there, Christ the King.
One of the most exciting times I've ever felt, just being able to do something like that for these boys. They were fun to be with, and a joy. And my mother and daddy were thrilled to have them. She wanted them to stay in Nashville. Happy for them, sad for herself though. I mean, like, you know, that was really hard when you've been with those boys and dinner every night. I know she cried.
I think one of the most emotional parts was leaving Nashville when that happened, that we came back to Miami. We were coming back to our family, but it was very hard.
Yeah, because you're coming back to your family, but you're leaving this family, which were warm and kept us safe.
At that age, you lose the closest of that first family that you had, which is our own family in Cuba. At that age, you're transitioning into young adults, and you were nurtured by a family that's not yours.
It was hard, and it was just as hard when my parents came. It was like seeing strangers all of a sudden, and we were grown up, and my parents still thought of us as the little kids they left.
At our age, we weren't aware of how Catholic Charities was involved in bringing Anna, but I don't know what our life would be without her. And the influence she's had on our family, that's been really important. You know, we have lots of extended family now, and Anna, of course, is right on top of the cake, aren't you? So everybody respects her. So we appreciate that Catholic Charities was involved in that, because we would have missed out on that.
For my family and what I learned from taking in a refugee and then my aunt and uncle taking in another refugee, it was a great lesson on welcoming the stranger, opening the door for someone in need. Those are absolute qualities of Catholic social teaching. Catholic Charities is just an amazing organization, not just in the Diocese of Nashville, but nationwide, and reaching out and helping. They do a lot of things, but reaching out and helping immigrant communities is hugely important. And the new wave of immigrants coming to escape violence and poverty and wretchedness. And it is not very different from what people were trying to escape Cuba.
When I arrived, that's when I found out that Catholic Charities was the organization that helped bring us here. Gosh, if it was not for them, none of us kids would have come here.
Every kid that went to a foster home or school or something in the United States in 1962, 1961, were all promoted by the Catholic Charities.
We're very grateful with everyone.
Extremely grateful.
Extremely grateful with everyone involved from the beginning.
The ending is good. They've all turned out well. They have good families of their own, and they've made a new life here in America. It's a beautiful story.